I have an addiction, ladies and gentlemen. I'm addicted to writing poetry. I know I'm just wearing this dressing gown now because it's actually quite cold in here at the moment, so that's just why that is. I'm not doing it to like create the effect of looking more like a poet, even though like with the dressing gown on, admittedly I do look more like a poet, so there's that as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm addicted to writing poetry. I've written probably about 7 or 8 poems today of varying quality, and it's always varying quality as well. I mean, for every like 3 poems I write, I reckon I get like one good one or one good draft of one poem. But what I can't seem to do is rein myself in, work on a single draft, and then like make that really perfect and complete. And I'm addicted to hitting the publish button on medium.com or on my social media. I just fritter out poems, just poetry, poetry, poetry all day, every day. And well, I know it's not a bad addiction to have. I don't think it's a good addiction to have because it benefits me on like a spiritual level or something, or on an emotional, psychological um, level connected to feeling and the I'm just sort of flexing what I can do, I suppose, as a writer and trying to improve my craft, right? To invoke notions so pretentious as perfecting one's craft. I think this is something that's never going to leave me. I think I'm never going to, not write poetry. I mean, what's the point of not writing poetry? Or well, what's the point of not writing poetry? If you write poetry, why should you never not write Sorry, why should you never write poetry? Is your poetry that awful that you should never write it? I mean, some poetry out there, including my own, by the way, is god awful. And I've written some terrible, terrible poetry in my time. But I've written some good ones, I think. And some ones which I think even maybe deserving of getting published. But I don't know, like, it's a constant sort of impetus, a drive I feel to do something like that, to write a great poem. And I only need one. That's the thing. That's the thing that keeps me going. That's the really tantalizing thing about writing poetry. You just need one poem to come out perfect. And sometimes they do come out nearly perfect, I think. And sometimes they come out really, really well. Sometimes they come out god awfully. And I love playing around with it on the page. I love writing amusing, funny little poems, disturbing, dark poetry. I write as well, but I have a disturbing, dark sense of humour, so it kind of like intersects with the humorousness of my poetry. Yes, I thought that I'd do a video all about my poetry, but I'm not going to read any of my poetry. I mean, there's videos out there of me reading some of my poetry. Like Modular Arithmetic is one poem I wrote, which I thought was really good. I can't remember it off by heart, but there's a video out there if you want to find that of me reading Modular Arithmetic. It's just a poem I was quite proud of, about growing up in a rural environment and feeling segregated from that world or separate from it. Do you care for any of my poetry? But yeah, it's something I love, I mean, I was more always drawn to writing prose, I think, for the prospect of, making money as a novelist and so on, since I don't think it's really as easy to make money with poetry. I think poetry is very, very poorly remunerated, and poets have to find alternatives to writing poetry to, like lots of them are university lecturers and so on, lots of them edits of magazines and literary journals and do all this other stuff that isn't writing poetry, but and they make their money that way. But no, I mean, I love what I do. I'm glad to be in this position in life where I do something that I enjoy, where I can spend my free time, a lot of my free time actually writing poetry and compiling an ever higher pile of the shit. And yeah, just getting in that groove, in that writerly groove of, I mean, look, like this this is how bad the addiction has gotten, right? Like this entire look at it. Look, it is all filled with poems, and some prose as well. But ignoring that, like a little letter here and there. But yeah, like loads of poems, poem, poem, poems, more, every single day. Why? Why do I do this to myself? I mean, it's more than my mother could ever read. It's more than anyone like I know could possibly get their head around. I've had some lovely comments about my poetry from people I am friends with who like my stuff, and you know I've done some readings of poetry on stage. We got great reception, you know, for some poems I've done. Oh. I think I'll continue with it. I think I enjoy the poetry. I look very poety. I look very much like a little poet. Like you know, that's one thing that the world can never take from me. I am a poet. Damn it. I'm most certainly a poet. I have written poetry. That's all you need to do to be a poet. So yeah, I'm a poet. That's what I've ended up becoming. Jesus Christ. How to navigate that one. That depth of shallows. how to navigate this sort of life, this artsy, poetic life. There are poems on my walls. That's literally where this has come down to. Well, that is a poem. There's poems there. Poems. Poetry everywhere. I wish more people appreciated it. Poetry, that is, in general. Loads of people sneer at poetry or say that they don't like it, don't understand it. Heavily inspired by this man, yes, Walt Whitman. I've read most of these now. Complete works of Walt Whitman. I've actually written more poetry than he has. If this is indeed his complete works. This is probably his complete published works, if you know what I mean. By no means like his complete body of work, right? It's probably all the poems of his that got published in various books of poetry, but it's a headache trying to think about publishing and getting a chapbook out there or something, or a small book of poetry. How to assemble such a thing, such a device. And how to wade through all this again and again and again. Go back and read my fucking handwriting. Look, that's what my handwriting looks like. I can barely read that. Or I have to sort of interpret it. Oh God, God, God. Ooh. There's big words in there that I can't remember what they were when I wrote them, and I can barely figure out what I can, I'm sure they're spelled correctly. Well, I hope that sanctimonious, then if it's got the word sanctimonious at the opening of the poem, it might even be a good poem. Who knows? So admitting sanctimoniousness in myself? Possibly. Oh heavens, the life of a poet. Bye everyone, this has been my video about the travails of writing poetry. Have we lost? Bye.